Welcome to another edition of the Tom Green Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the season is finally here. After months and months of waiting, anticipating, we finally have Michigan football. And this week, we have a special guest from the Under the Dome podcast. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it. It's on SoundCloud. We have the host of the Under the Dome podcast. His name is Ben Belden, and he is joining us today. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here, talk some Notre Dame, Michigan football. So, it's a great time of year. It's probably like my favorite time of year, so I'm excited for this chat and just for football in general.
Yeah, it's been 4 years now since the last Michigan-Notre Dame game, which I try to forget. But, of course, you remember.
I was going to say that Notre Dame fans know exactly when the last time Notre Dame and Michigan played was, so it's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. So I've got 3 shout-outs before we get started. My first shout-out is actually going to be to Caitlin Alessi. She actually attended Notre Dame or St. Mary's College for 3 years and is a huge Notre Dame fan. And she's now at the Indiana IU School of Optometry. So she'll be listening to this show because it's a Notre Dame show. Another shout-out to Spiro Castros. He's a big Notre Dame fan at my work, Essexville Krogers. He's crazy, but he's another Notre Dame fan, Packers fan too. So he's got the double whammy going on. And my last shout-out is to Lee Thompson. About an hour before I recorded this show, he actually interviewed me for the Beat the Elite High School and MLive High School Football picks. I actually was one of the 4 guys that beat Lee this week, so be sure to look for that on MLive. I'll be sure to show the article on the show. And also, before I forget, like the Tom Green Podcast on Facebook and on Twitter. Of course, I'll tell Ben to do that as well, as he now knows. So be sure to like that, and this will be up as soon as possible. So, without further ado, Michigan-Notre Dame. Ben, where are these teams? Like, I'm sure you've watched SpongeBob. Patrick goes up to his rock and asks, "Who are you people?"
As far as where these two teams are, that is, that's the $1 million question, I guess. I think they're in similar places, at a place in the program history where it's time, or at least fans feel like it's time for them to take the next step. Obviously, Brian Kelly's tenure at Notre Dame has been a little bit longer than Jim Harbaugh's at Michigan, but I think both fan bases, I guess, are a little bit restless, thinking that it's not going to be long, hopefully, that their team takes the next step, but also with a little bit of anxiety that, always comes with the beginning of a college football season. There's a lot of questions, and that's sort of just the nature of it. I mean, college football is filled with questions and things, and, I always chuckle when people say, make these definitive statements about position groups and teams early on in the year, because every team, like I say, has question marks, and no team's question marks really are, in Notre Dame and Michigan's case, really much bigger than the other ones. So they're in similar places, that's for sure, and that just adds kind of an extra layer of intrigue to Saturday night.
Oh, definitely. And as Ben had tweeted last week, there were some writers that had Notre Dame in the top 10. There were some writers that had Notre Dame out of the top 25. And I kind of feel the same way about Michigan, as, of course, Shea Patterson has been named the starter. And this has been the earliest Harbaugh has named a starter since Andrew Luck back in Stanford in 2009. So, obviously, Shea's got to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, and if, Shea turns out the same way that Andrew Luck does, then Michigan's going to be in for a pretty good season. So, yeah, I think it was the worst kept secret ever that Shea Patterson was going to start game 1. But, usually Harbaugh, like you said, kind of just, plays it a little closer to the vest than that. But I guess, like I said, it was the best kept secret. He probably didn't really feel like he was keeping too much of a secret, so he just let it out of the bag, I suppose.
Yeah, last year when I was on this show doing the Michigan-Florida preview, Harbaugh had still not named the starter yet. And I had assumed that Florida was going to name Malik Zaire their starter. Instead, they went with Felipe Franks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, to talk about Malik Zaire and what happened to him. He was a guy that I really liked in Notre Dame, and obviously things didn't work out for him with injuries and then the emergence of Deshaun Kaiser and things. But, that's interesting that you mentioned Malik. Still pulling for him. He could have stayed at Florida another year. I'm not really sure why he didn't at least try to compete for the job. But anyway, so he's searching for NFL or CFL or whatever it is work these days, I guess.
Yeah, at this point, after college football, there really isn't much of a developmental football league past college, which has been, I guess, the problem with football in that aspect. But CFL, I mean, you only get 3 downs, but you can try CFL, as Johnny Manziel has.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how well that's working out for him. So I guess we'll see the bulk of it later on. But
yeah,
good for those guys, for trying. I mean, it's great for Johnny Manziel, I guess. And I know we're getting off topic, but it's good for Johnny Manziel to even just be playing any type of football at this point, I guess.
Yeah, I had watched his first game and he looked terrible, but it's since he has done pretty well. So, getting back to the Michigan-Notre Dame topic, I'm going to hit an ad real quick, and then we will get to the depth charts, I guess. Let's see. Nectar, the bed of your dreams. Nectar has aligned all of their efforts around one simple promise: the best sleep of your life guaranteed. Featuring a 365-night trial and a forever warranty, this bed will be the best you've ever owned. As you may know that I'm affiliated with 3 Point Stance Magazine. Jeff Lyons, Brandon Rush have gotten me into the program, and they want me to read ads for football stuff, so I have done so. And from what I've read there, that might be a pretty comfortable bed to sleep on after this game. Probably most likely hungover, the both of us.
Yeah, I'll either be, sleeping soundly or with a lot of angst, I think. So there won't be much in the middle.
Right. So back to Michigan-Notre Dame. Since you're the Notre Dame guy, let's talk a little Brandon Wimbush versus Michigan's defense. How do you think that's going to pan out?
Well, that's interesting. I think that, a lot has been, and I consume a lot of other Notre Dame writers and what they say and things, and I think kind of the consensus is that Brandon Wimbush, especially, and we haven't even talked about the Notre Dame running back situation, which we can here in a little bit, but, it's a little bit volatile with the running backs for Notre Dame, with Dexter Williams likely suspended and pretty much everybody else on the depth chart not having a whole lot of experience as far as being a college ball carrier goes. So for that reason, circling back to Brandon Wimbush, I think that it's safe to say that he's going to run the ball a lot against Michigan. Design quarterback runs. They have a lot of belief in their backup quarterback, Ian Book, and a lot's been made of that recently. So I think Notre Dame's going to have the willingness to run Wimbush an awful lot, because I just don't think against Michigan's defense you're going to have a lot of a lot of success and a lot of opportunity to run some of those screen plays that Notre Dame likes to run from time to time that they haven't been able to execute real well over the last year. I just don't think that's the way to go with the short passing game. So I think you're going to see a lot of design quarterback runs. Obviously, you're going to see Brandon probably, with Michigan's pass rush, probably have to pull the ball down and run a whole awful lot, because he's going to get to, through 1 or 2 progressions, and then he's probably going to have to take off, because that's about all you can get to with Michigan's pass rush. From time to time. And I don't know. It'll be an interesting matchup. I think that Brandon's mobility and athleticism is absolutely the reason that he's starting this game, and he's the starter for Notre Dame going forward, because if he can put some plays together with his feet and then hit on a couple of deep balls, then that's going to be successful for the Notre Dame quarterback position. He can do both of those things.
Right, and Michigan, because it's been 4 years since this rivalry, has not seen Brandon Wimbush play, so this will be interesting on their front too. So since you mentioned the running backs, talk about the running back game a little bit.
Yeah, so I mentioned Dexter Williams. I've said this on my podcast and other podcasts that I've been guests on that it's hard to put it. Today, Brian Kelly basically said that Dexter Williams will be in full pads and on the sideline for the Michigan game, and then he said we'll see what happens after kickoff. And what he means by that is anybody's guess. Notre Dame doesn't necessarily always disclose why players are suspended and that type of thing, and that's because they're a private institution and sort of there are different rules, I guess, that they play by with disclosing that type of information. But pretty much people think that Dexter Williams is suspended at least in some way, shape, or form for probably the first 4 games of the season. That's kind of been something that has happened to multiple Notre Dame players throughout the year. They get suspended. We don't really know why, and we never really officially find out. So he's really the only back that comes back with any experience that is worth talking about. Tony Jones Jr. is a junior. He got 40-some carries last year. I think he averaged 4 or 5 yards a carry. A lot of that was in mop-up type duty. He's a good pass protector, but from everything that we've heard, he seems to be not real impressive with what has gone on this August as they prepare for the season. And then behind Tony Jones Jr., you just have a bunch of guys that have never actually carried a football in a college game before. Jafar Armstrong is a really tantalizing prospect. He was a freshman last year. They have converted him from wide receiver to running back pretty much exclusively at this point, and he's going to probably basically be the backup. I expect Jones to get the most carries, but Jafar Armstrong, won't be far behind as far as running backs are concerned. And then behind Jafar Armstrong, a converted quarterback, Avery Davis, is probably behind him. Then you get into true freshman territory with guys like Saborius Flemister and Jameer Smith, who are both true freshmen that might get some carries here and there. Certainly in week 1 against Michigan, you're not going to probably want to rely too much on true freshmen. So,
right.
The guys that Michigan are going to play or are going to see are Jones Jr., Armstrong, and then a little bit of Avery Davis sprinkled in.
Gotcha. I will say that last year, especially, Michigan's soft spot on defense was pretty much the running game.
Right. And I think, if you look at Michigan's defensive line, obviously lost some talent at defensive tackle. Notre Dame's strength of their offensive line, I think, are the 2 guards in the center. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Notre Dame try to go just straight behind those 3 type of guys to try to, seal off those defensive ends on the edge and try to not deal with them as much as possible and try to run behind those type of guys and exploit those matchups. I don't know that I would necessarily say that Notre Dame's offensive line has an advantage against Michigan's defensive line, but I think if there's like a crack where they feel like they might be able to exploit something, it's just the straight up the middle run on, either butt cheek up the center, I guess. Yeah,
because it frustrated me during the state game and the Ohio State game last year. The running game has just the run defense just hasn't quite been there for Michigan, despite being a top 10 defense in college football, and they will be again this year under Don Brown.
Surely. Yeah, I'm excited to see how, excited and nervous, excited to see how Notre Dame stacks up against an elite level defense. Obviously, last year we played Georgia in week 2, and I don't know, no offense, but I don't know that Michigan's quite as good as Georgia was last year, but they're close.
Yeah, because I had watched part of Notre Dame and Georgia last year. Of course, I'm kind of old school when college football's on. I'll just be flipping channels left and right to see what's going on. But when Georgia beat Notre Dame last year by 1, I thought, geez, is Georgia even that good right now? And then all of a sudden, boom, national championship. Kirby, you've done great things.
Yeah, and I was in attendance for Notre Dame, Georgia. I went back and I watched the replay because I always do, and I like torture. And
see, I'm the opposite. Whenever Michigan loses or even the Tigers lose, I can't watch highlights. But besides the point.
Yeah, I went back and I watched the replay, and I don't know that even necessarily on screen you could see it as much as you could like in the stadium, but just Georgia just had outside backers and defensive ends that were just inhuman in their speed and athleticism. Everyone makes a big deal about Roquan Smith. I mean, he was that good. Right. And then, they just had guys, and they would just put them on rotation, and Notre Dame really struggled on the edges.
Literally. Well, they weren't between the hedges, but you get my point.
Right. So that's good. Notre Dame goes between the hedges next year, so that'll be interesting. But
yeah,
anyway,
that will literally be a dog fight.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So, I guess I'll also ask, and I'll answer myself before I ask you. Talking about a season setup game, and last year for Michigan, Florida was a real setup game because last year we didn't know where Michigan was at. We thought that Florida was going to be very impressive, especially going to the SEC title game either 2 out of 3 years or 2 years in a row. But we found out that Florida wasn't that impressive, and I guess you can say about Jim McElwain, if you can't beat him, join him, and now Jim McElwain is with our staff. But for this year, I guess you could go either way with both teams. If Michigan wins this game, they look very impressive. If Notre Dame wins this game, they might even look more impressive. But I guess I'll ask you, the winner, who will look more impressive with a win in this game?
Great question. I think since Notre Dame is playing at home, I think that the more impressive team, if they should win, would be Michigan, just because road test of this magnitude, week 1, obviously, that's an impressive win. Mm-hmm. But obviously, there's another layer to that, and the fact that Notre Dame's offense has some question marks, and if they can come out and perform well against the Michigan defense, rather, then there's a layer to that as well. So I'll go with Michigan as probably if they win, they're gonna. That's more impressive, but I don't say that with a great degree of resolve and confidence, I suppose.
Yeah, and if one team blows another team out, which I know you want Notre Dame to blow Michigan out as much as I want Michigan to blow Notre Dame out, it might not look that impressive for either squad.
Absolutely right.
So, with that being said, we'll talk a little Michigan now. Shea Patterson against Notre Dame's defense. Now, unfortunately, Michigan is without Tariq Black again, which, believe it or not, doesn't faze me that much, and it's because last year we didn't play with him that much. But Shea has really used Tariq Black a lot in practice, and now without him, unfortunately I wasn't at the 1 hour open practice at Michigan because where I'm at, Essexville, is 2 hours away from Ann Arbor, so think about it, that just doesn't make sense for me. So I really didn't get to see much of that, but Grant Perry, Nico Collins, Oliver Martin looked good. Of course, DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, also another wide receiver. I really feel we should be all right with our wide receiving corps. But I will also mention, before I ask you about Notre Dame's defense, I'll mention, I actually had him on my show when he committed to Iowa, but Ben Van Sumeren has been a bit of a standout. He might not play in this game because he's actually a true freshman. But I had actually done a lot of stuff. I had actually announced, I actually do PA announcing for Essexville Garber High School. It's my alma mater. And Ben Van Sumeren really stood out. He actually committed to Iowa, like I said. But Harbaugh recruits him at the last second, pretty much. And now he's at Michigan, and he impressed the Michigan faithful with his dance moves at Saturday's Saturday's film and meetings. So watch out for Ben Van Sumeren if he gets into this game. But besides that, let's talk about Notre Dame's defense. Where are they at right now?
Well, let me start by saying this: is that I've been talking to Notre Dame people, listening to other Notre Dame content, and I think the consensus that I've drawn that others would agree with, I think, is that when you look across the board, I don't see if you look position group, offensive, like receivers versus defensive backs of either team. So I'll put it this way. I think that as I look at Notre Dame versus Michigan and offensive position groups versus defensive position groups, for either team, I don't see an instance where any offensive position group necessarily has an advantage against any defensive position group for either team. If there's one place where Michigan or Notre Dame might have maybe an offensive position group might have a little bit of an advantage, it would probably end up being tight ends versus safeties and receivers. But other than that, I think that's a minimal advantage as it is. So as far as Notre Dame's defense is concerned, I think they're going to be pretty darn good. People are talking about how Brian Kelly even said just today that their defensive line is the deepest it's been since his time at Notre Dame. They're going to play 8 guys. They play 4 what you would call defensive linemen. So they've got a 2 deep that, everyone is really excited about the 2 deep at all 4 of those positions. Tavon Coney, their middle buck linebacker, is going to be one of the best players on the field on Saturday. He was the best player on the field for Notre Dame pretty much in every game that they played all of last year, and he kind of came out as a surprise last year, actually. And Drew Tranquil, who played Rover for Notre Dame last year, is moving into the weak side type linebacker. And, Notre Dame really has just a lot of experience. The only places you're going to see new faces off of a defense that played pretty well last year is at Drew Tranquil's old position, the Rover position. There's a few guys in the mix there. Asmar Bilal is probably going to start. And then, at the back, they improved their safety play because a guy who was ineligible last year, Alohi Gilman, transferred in from Navy. He had to sit out last season and couldn't play. He's going to upgrade their safety play, and the other incumbent safety, Nick Coleman, has vastly improved ahead of his senior year as well. So I don't know that the benchmark for Notre Dame fans is to talk about 2012, the year we went to the national title.
Right.
I don't think they'll be quite that good, but I think aspects of their defense will be better. Like I think they'll have a better pass rush than that team did, but. I think they're going to be close to that good, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So, I say that and things could go south real quickly, but obviously there's question marks with the defensive coordinator leaving and that type of thing. I don't think that makes a whole lot of a difference, to be honest. So.
Right, and I felt that way with Michigan's defense once DJ Durkin left for Maryland, but of course Don Brown has done an impressive job, and look where DJ Durkin is standing right now, in about 7 feet of water, and he's only about 6 foot tall, just to say the least. So Michigan will have their hands full with Notre Dame's defense, of course, and really Michigan's weak point over the Rich Rod and the Hoke area, now going into Harbaugh, has been the offensive line. Yes, they've had impressive running games against FCS schools and that stuff, but when they came to Michigan State, Ohio State, they just haven't been impressive with the run, and that might be the same case here. Hopefully not against you guys.
Yeah, what this game is going to come down to is, both teams have some questions on offensive line, I think, and both teams have what they feel is a pretty darn good defensive line, and it's really going to come down to, which offensive line does a better job of holding their water against the other team's defensive line. I think that's honestly what it comes down to, and that's what will decide the game.
And of course, I got to ask, before we do the score predictions, approximately how long will it take before Brian Kelly's face gets beat red?
He really doesn't do that anymore. He's really cooled down over the last couple of years. I think he started to listen to some of his criticisms, I guess, and saw some of the memes that were made of him and that type of thing. And there's something to be made out of this. After Notre Dame went 4-8, Brian Kelly said that he was more proactive in meeting with his players after the season, and getting getting a feel for how they felt things were being handled in the program. And I think probably what was talked about was, well, sometimes your way of criticizing doesn't always jive with people. And I think he really listened, and he doesn't really I haven't seen him get beat red the way he used to, where he got infamous for and put into memes and all of that. So hopefully he keeps it that way. I mean, he gets fired up. Don't mistake what I'm saying.
As any coach does. I mean, if you don't get fired up, then you don't have a fired up team.
Absolutely. I think he's able to keep it in check a little bit better than he used to be, however.
If you may not have listened to one of my previous shows, but I had actually had a high school football coach on to talk the Michigan football preview, was Kevin Marshall, and he really doesn't get fired up that much on when the play is going on, but he'll let the kids know when he's not enthused or not satisfied. But great man, Kevin Marshall.
Absolutely.
So, with Brian Kelly's face hopefully not getting red, but in my case, I hope it gets beat red to the point where it explodes. Well, maybe not that much, to be humanely speaking, but we around here, at least I called him the Catholic Screamer.
He certainly has that old Catholic, he's from like the Boston, Massachusetts area.
Where they don't know about car keys or khakis.
Right. So he definitely has kind of that, angry Irish type feel about him, that's for sure.
Which, if you've seen you've probably seen a lot of my pictures. So I'm actually Irish. The McGee family is my Irish roots. So if you think I look Irish, I am.
I am as well. So
awesome. Sláinte. Air. With that being said, our score predictions. How do you think Saturday night under the lights at Notre Dame? Now, taking the Homer Notre Dame glasses off. I know that's hard to do, but Saturday night under the lights in South Bend. Probably having Five Guys before or after the game. Great place to eat. Five Guys burgers and fries. How's this game's going to go?
I think if you watched Notre Dame, Georgia last year, I think it's going to be a case where the first team to 20 probably wins. Okay. Now, I will say, and having said that, I've heard some score predictions like 17-14 and some stuff like that. I just think that with, obviously it's going to be a defensive battle, but sometimes with good defenses, what that means is that good defense, forces a turnover down in the other team's red zone and gives the offense, a short field to play with, and they set up touchdowns. So I think that's going to happen. I think the game is going to be, like I say, a game where, it's going to be one in the trenches, and another place it's going to be one is potentially in the turnover battle. Which team makes fewer mistakes? I think each team makes a mistake or two in this game, and that might kind of actually heighten the score a little bit. So I'll go with 24 to 23 Fighting Irish.
Okay. I'm actually going to say 24-21 Michigan. I think that despite Nordine's struggles last year, I think he gets it going to start off this season, and he hits a 35 to 45 yard field goal at the buzzer to break the hearts of the Fighting Irish and bring Michigan to a great win, hopefully. So we both have very close scores. You to the Irish, myself to the Wolverines. With that being said, I'm going to hit another ad real quick, and we'll go to a famed segment that I did last year that we will continue this year. So, without further ado, Fanatics. Fanatics sells officially licensed merchandise for the NCAA, NFL, MLB, NHL, NBA, UFC, MLS, and even NASCAR. They have a huge selection of jerseys, shirts, hats, collectibles, memorabilia, and more, with over 400,000 items available and many more on the way. So, with that being said, we are reintroducing our rapid fire contest, which last year Basically, how this goes is I have actually 8 games. I know I told you 7, but 8 to pick, and the one I added is pretty obvious. 8 games for you to pick. I'll have between 5 and 11 games on the schedule to pick. Highest winning percentage at the end of the year wins a prize that will not exceed $25, as I don't want to break broadcasting rules. Last year, Aaron Gosser, one of our fans, won a 24-pack of Miller as a prize. So, 8 games on the docket. Because there are no NFL games, it's all college. Usually my rule goes ranked versus ranked or interesting matchups. NFL is 2.5 or lower on the spread. So, with that being said, to our games. First up, Thursday night, Big Ten matchup, Northwestern Purdue.
I'm going to go with the team that I know a little bit more about. I'm going to go with Northwestern. And the reason I know a little bit more about them is because they're on Notre Dame's schedule this year. Northwestern has a front seven that, I don't know, it's really good. So I think that Northwestern is kind of a sleeper team this year, so I'm going to go with them.
Okay. I like, as Lee Corso says, great pick. I like Northwestern in that game. They're always that pesky team in the Big Ten. Purdue has made some improvements under Jeff Brown, but I like Northwestern 31-21. We're going to go Washington State, Wyoming.
Man, obviously, what has happened at Washington State this offseason is awful.
Oh, yes, with the quarterback, yes.
Absolutely. And then, I just think, as people have said, Mike Leach, their coach, was basically out the door to go to Tennessee before Tennessee went another direction. I don't know that Washington State can overcome that, so I'll go the opposite direction and go with Wyoming.
You're going to go with Wyoming? I like that pick as well. Craig Bohl is a quarterback whisperer, as we've seen Carson Wentz really have a lot of success in the NFL despite the ACL. I like the way Wyoming is going, and I will pick them 31-27. Washington State loses another game that you think they really got to win these games, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Let's go FAU, Oklahoma.
You picked some interesting games, by the way. I think that kind of for a similar reason, I think early season matchup after Oklahoma had a lot of success last year. Obviously, Baker Mayfield is gone. I struggle to say I like Lane Kiffin, but I'm intrigued by him. I think that even though Oklahoma has a lot of talent coming back, they lost their guy in Baker Mayfield, and I think that FAU maybe pulls the upset in this one.
You like FAU?
I'm intrigued. I think they're pretty legit.
Well, for those who have watched my show for years, because I actually started producing shows in 2010. I actually did a bracketology show with Jordan Bennett years ago, and the upset special was this sound.
What a night, Venus! Crew, howl with me so that we might set the 7 seas ablaze with fear! Ow!
That was my upset special sound. And guess what? FAU 27, Oklahoma 24. Give me the upset. Give me Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss, Texas Tech.
Man, that one's a stumper. Is it at Texas Tech?
Yes.
For that reason, and because I don't know a lot about either of those two teams, personnel-wise, I know what Texas Tech does, and I know what Ole Miss does. Obviously, Ole Miss missing Shea Patterson, has had their off-the-field stuff. I tend to think that that's a pretty big, I guess, detractor from their team.
Mm-hmm. So you're good. You're going with Texas Tech then?
Yep.
Well, I guess we might not disagree on a pick this entire session. I'm going Texas Tech as well, the Fighting Cliff Kingsburys at home. It's probably going to be like 61-60 the final because Big what is defense 12. But with Ole Miss, Ole Miss without Shea Patterson, and with what went on last year at their program, that's a big question mark. Texas Tech 55, Ole Miss 45. Washington Auburn.
I'm going to go, and this is a neutral site game, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And refresh me, where is this being played?
I believe this is the Chick-Fil-A game.
Okay.
In Atlanta. No, that's the one I added.
Is this one in Dallas?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't want to say that, but I did. So, anyway. I think Washington's really, really good. Washington with a veteran quarterback, Browning. Auburn isn't exactly a slouch with Jarrett Stidham. Auburn lost some running backs, obviously. I think that Washington, regardless of how this game goes, I think...
Correction, there it is in Atlanta.
Oh, it's in Atlanta. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well,
that's all right.
Not I
had to look it up.
But anyway, I think that regardless of how this game goes, Washington makes it to the college football playoff because this is really about the only game that on their schedule I think that is a question mark, a major question mark. I think they pretty well are going to own the Pac-12. Mm-hmm. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead still and take Washington in this one. Even though they have to travel a lot more, obviously, than Auburn does, I think that's I'm a big believer in Washington and what Chris Peterson has done out there. And
Chris Peterson last year had said, nobody's going to watch us because our games are after 5 o'clock Pacific time. So this is the game that really could separate Washington from the rest of the field. And, yeah, give me Washington 31-21. Auburn has really only won one big game, really, since Gus Malzahn. And that was the Alabama game last year, I guess you want to say that. So right. Gus Malzahn may very well be on the hot seat. So the game I added, and I said it shouldn't be a surprise, Louisville, Alabama.
Yeah, easy pick for me, Alabama. Louisville just obviously has to replace too much with, oh my goodness, I'm having the blondest of blonde moments. Lamar Jackson. Yeah. I couldn't think of his first name for a second there. In Alabama's Alabama, I think Tua Tagovailoa, or however you say his name, is really very good. And I think that Alabama is going to win this one easily.
Yeah. Just imagine if Saban didn't go with Tua in the second half. Georgia would be your national champions right now.
And I wouldn't have minded that one bit, given that Georgia beat Notre Dame by 1. I could have touted that a whole awful lot. So,
Yeah, and it took a perfect pass from Tua to win that game, and sure enough, it happened.
Yep, absolutely.
I was just shocked. So, yeah, I got to take Bama as well. I can't Louisville, like I said, too much to replace. That's your Thursday, Saturday games. Your Sunday night game, Miami, LSU.
I watched Miami last year. They obviously were very good at the beginning. I expect that to be the same. They obviously torched Notre Dame in November. Not to say that they weren't good late, but they had some struggles down the stretch outside of Notre Dame. But give me Miami.
Alrighty. 1 second. I gotta find it.
a great day. Tiger football was a great day of my life. I promise you that. I want to thank Coach Miles for bringing me here. And it's a place that I always wanted to come. Gave him a standing ovation, and on we moved on.
You can't understand half of what he's saying, but the players do. Eddie O, great guy. This season might not go that well for him, but you know what? Screw it. Not so fast, my friend. Give me the upset. LSU 27, Miami 24. I might be crazy for picking that, but I gotta differ with you on at least one pick. So that's the pick I'm gonna differ with you on.
Sounds good.
And our final game, Monday night Labor Day. If you haven't gotten back to school yet, this is the game that you watch. You're thinking, oh, I gotta go back to work tomorrow. Virginia Tech, Florida State.
You know, and this is intriguing too with all the ACC implications. Both teams are on Notre Dame's schedule. Boy, both teams, a lot of turnover in the off season for reasons. Is this one at Florida State, or is this a neutral site game?
I believe it's at Florida State.
Yeah, that's why I think you're right. I think that there's a little bit less as far as question marks are concerned at Virginia Tech. And even though they're on the road in this one, I think that, even though they've lost a lot of their defense and things, I think Virginia Tech's able to win this game going away. And I hope, however, that both teams stumble, I guess you could say, when they face off with Notre Dame later in the season.
I guess hopefully DeAndre Francois stays healthy, because last year and going back to the preseason rankings that you talked about, Florida State was ranked 3, I believe, if I'm correct, to start last season. They went 6-6.
Yep.
About all you need to know about that. I like Willie Taggart. Willie Taggart, of course, I guess you can call disciple of Harbaugh. Give me Florida State in that one, even though my dad is a huge Florida State hater and is listening to the show at live and will probably punch me after I get off the phone with you, but I don't care. Florida State 27, Virginia Tech 24, but I like what Justin Fuente has done at Virginia Tech. Keep the dancing grandpa Frank Beamer, though. I like seeing him dance. That's hilarious.
I will say, in regards to that game, that I think Florida State will be pretty decent by season's end. I just think that, new coach, tough for a matchup, first game. I don't know. That's the reason for my pick, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And if we all remember 2014, we all know what happened at the Horseshoe when Virginia Tech visited.
Yeah, that is very true.
So you never know what can happen. So, with that being said, my final question to you is there anything else that you would like to add or ask me for this show?
No, I don't think so. If I can give myself just sort of a little bit of a shameless plug.
Absolutely.
Check me out on Twitter. Belden 330. I write for Slap the Sign, so if you're interested in some written word, we have 12 writers over there for our Notre Dame website. We've done all kind of, stuff preparing for the Michigan game, as you can imagine, and continue to do so. So, slapthesign.com, and then Under the Dome podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, all of that stuff as well. So that's really all for me.
If you're an American Pickers fan, Mike and Frake slap a lot of signs onto their business in LeClaire. So make sure to check out Ben's stuff and check out our stuff. And this has been the Tom Green Podcast. Thanks a lot, Ben, for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Be prepared for another show as I bring in a fantasy football expert to the Tom Green Podcast. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you soon.